Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today, I want to take you to the Battle of Gettysburg on the Confederate side at some point after July 1st. Behind the scenes, behind the front lines, the wounded men are being taken away to be delivered to makeshift hospitals for treatment. You can hear the creaking of the wagons moving from the front lines to the rear to get these men who are in desperate condition. They are suffering from battle wounds. They are suffering from the heat. They lack water. They are tired. They're exhausted. And to get these men to the some place of safety, a makeshift hospital, is what it's all about. I want to take you to one of these wagons that's creaking along. There's an Irishman who's driving the wagon, and this wagon has been effectively turned into an ambulance. There is a soldier inside, a lieutenant from South Carolina, and he is suffering badly. In fact, the Irishman is navigating his wagon to a hospital, and the wounded lieutenant is calling out. He's in pain, and the Irishman is diverted. He's feeling the sorrow and the empathy for this young boy. In fact, he says, "Poor boy, I hope will soon reach your hospital," trying to comfort this young man. When you looked at the young man, you could immediately see what had happened to him. Grape shot had struck him below the knee on his right leg, shattering the limb. There was no question. You didn't need to be a doctor to know by taking one look at this poor boy that an amputation lay in his future. At some point, that injury occurred during the fighting on July 1st, that first day of the fighting. The Irishman and the wagon with his precious cargo inside soon reached the hospital, and the lieutenant was carefully lifted out of the wagon by attendants and placed on a pile of straw. That lieutenant, he looked down and he said, "I knew my leg would have to be amputated." He later remembered this. "I knew my leg would have to be amputated." But he did not wish it to be done by the surgeon of our regiment. This is what he later wrote in a letter. He said, "I wanted Dr. Evins, the brigade surgeon, to perform the operation, and with tears streaming down my cheeks, begging him to do it, which he promised he would." The wounded lieutenant was named John Robert Boyles, and he was in the 12th South Carolina Infantry. He knew the man pictured here, Dr. Evins, Dr. Thomas Evins, was widely appreciated for his skill and his ability as a surgeon, and moreover, his compassion as a caregiver. Dr. Evins, that's Evans spelled with an I, was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina, into a family of Scotch-Irish descent. According to family legend, his ancestors had spelled their last name Evans with an A, but after disagreement between the family and an early ruling house of England by the same name, they changed their vowel from A to I to distinguish the two clans. Evans, with an I, first studied as a young man, first studied under the care of an uncle who was a doctor, and then attended college and graduated with a medical degree. He went on to open a practice, this is before the war, opened a practice in Anderson, South Carolina, where, according to one writer who noted that Evans, quote, forged a close and sacred intimacy with the families of this community, end quote, and established a reputation as a man of, quote, refined taste and correct principles. You can imagine in anywhere in the United States to have a doctor, a quality doctor along the lines of Dr. Evans was a gift. Then the war came. In 1861, Evans left behind his community and his practice and accepted an appointment as a surgeon in the Confederate Army. 3 months later, he joined Orr's Rifles. It's a regiment named by its founder and first colonel, James L. Orr. That regiment, Orr's Rifles, was also known as the 1st South Carolina Infantry in recognition of its having the honor to be the first regiment of rifles raised in the Palmetto State after the war began. Dr. Evins had an assistant surgeon who was quite a well-known name or came from a well-known family. That assistant surgeon was William McNeill Whistler, who was the brother of the gifted painter James Abbott McNeill Whistler. Just a little bit of a side light there. Now back to now Surgeon Evins. As you might imagine, like he did with his community in Anderson, he established a sterling reputation for the manner in which he managed his staff and tended to his patients. No surprise, he advanced to chief surgeon of his brigade and served as the brigade surgeon at Gettysburg. It was that first day of the battle when he encountered the wounded Lieutenant Boyles, who, as you may recall, begged for Dr. Evins to help him. Well, Evins made good on his promise to aid the young officer, that young Lieutenant Boyles begging for his help. The saw was taken out of the kit. We don't know what kind of anesthetizing or anything that was done to care for him, but the amputation was done and Boyles survived. He survived his amputation. He managed to recover and survive the war. So his asking for Dr. Evins by name, you want to believe that it contributed to at least the positive mental attitude as well as the skill of Dr. Evins. So the young lieutenant survived the war, and so did Dr. Evins. He managed to be with this brigade all the way through the rest of the war, the Overland Campaign in 1864, the Appomattox Campaign in 1865, and was surgeon of his division when he was paroled at Appomattox Courthouse in April 1865. Dr. Evins returned to Anderson and his practice in the community. He married in 1866. However, a short lifespan was characteristic of his generation of the Evins family. His 4 younger brothers and sisters died before reaching the age of 60, and Dr. Evins was no exception. In early 1872, kidney disease slowed him down and forced him to close his practice. He spent the last months of his life confined to his bed and died before the end of the year at age 47. His wife, 3 children, and several siblings, including his brother, future U.S. Congressman John Hamilton Evins, survived him. So there you have it, the story of Dr. Evins saving a young man, performing an amputation, saving the life of a young man, Lieutenant Boyles of the 12th South Carolina Infantry at Gettysburg. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.